Hello, everyone, and welcome to Coffee Shop Talks. My name is Paulo Saldana, and I am both a physiologist and a coach, and the founder of the PowerWatch training system. I'm also the performance director of the Israel Startup Nation World Tour professional cycling team. These different hats have provided me with a unique perspective into the art and the science of coaching and of training. During these Sunday talks, we'll be delving into everything from training methodology to athlete mindsets. We'll be speaking to athletes and industry insiders in professional cycling, and we'll cover a wide variety of topics that we hope will shed some light into what it takes to build champions.
We've reached out to Dan Martin, who's working out in his pain cave. I'm not sure. It's actually this afternoon, not this morning, actually, for you, but it's this morning for me here in Dunham, Quebec. It's 6:49 in the morning. And Dan has been stuck indoors for how long now, Dan?
6 or 7 weeks, 6.5 weeks, I think. So, we got pretty lucky because we finished a huge training block just before, I think the day before lockdown, right? And
right.
So the first week of lockdown, I didn't really do a whole lot because obviously that was part of my taper towards Volta Catalunya. And I was also in incredible form. We did a lot of hard work over the winter. And so since then I've been, I think honestly, it's been sticking on Power Watts, doing a lot of really hard work on Power Watts. And I'm really fortunate to be able to have had the beta version at home here and testing it out.
Yeah, it's I've enjoyed sort of logging in remotely. What those of you who don't know, Dan has a setup at home with a particular software called CPX, which drives all the PowerWatch training sessions. And what's interesting about CPX, it's not an avatar-based training system. It's more of a science-based multi-prescription engine to it that allows me to hit all of the gaps that Dan has on a very regular basis. And much to his chagrin, he's been suffering through some of these Power Watts based workouts indoors. So what I'll do is I'll log on in the morning and I'll sort of guide him through some of the sessions. Last few days we did this 2-minute challenge, 2-minute hell challenge. And don't forget that Dan is at altitude there in Andorra. So he suffered through that one, I'll tell you that. But what's it like though in Andorra these days? Is it starting to open up a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the media said that we could ride outside yesterday, but it was pretty restrictive to the point that I didn't even see the point. I have to drive 2-3 kilometers from my house. It's rules that just don't make sense. And I don't know when we're going to open up completely, hopefully very soon. But they want us to train with a mask and on one road, which obviously they're making a big allowance for the professionals in Andorra, which we're grateful for. But we kind of need to be able to train outside for more than 6 hours a week. And it's for a 2-hour training ride, I think as long as the head can handle it, I think indoors you accomplish a lot more. And that's why I'm still on CPX now. It's also it's not my day to ride. I can only ride on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So but the unfortunate part is, until now, it was actually quite cool conditions. Whereas the last 2 or 3 days, it's been 25, 26 degrees. So this pain cave is getting more and more humid and sweaty, and it's it gets quite unpleasant in the afternoon.
I can't even imagine being stuck indoors for 7 weeks. And you guys, I mean, one of the things that attracts you to cycling is the wind in your face, the exploring nature of it, that you go to all different beautiful places and climb great mountains. And you're kind of stuck in this basement area where you have to force yourself to look at numbers all day long, and it can be draining mentally. But
I can also look at the mountains.
Exactly, out of your window you have a view. So I don't think our viewers can actually review, but I've taken a look at it, and it's quite magnificent out there in Andorra. And a lot of pros live up in Andorra. Actually, probably what do you have, 40 or 50 pros living up there?
I think that's probably the problem here. obviously in Spain and France now, they're opening the restrictions only for professionals. But we have such a density of riders here. It's such a small country that's what they're afraid of. It's not just letting 10 guys out in a 50-kilometer radius. In
Right.
a 20k radius, we have 50 pros. So chances are that we're going to end up crossing paths, riding across each other, and I mean they obviously have their reasons, and we have to respect the rules, But it's obviously after 6 to 7 weeks, when every other country is undoing their lockdowns and we're still under lockdown, it's a little bit frustrating. But yeah, it is what it is. I think it's an interesting psychological aspect that if you had told me 7 weeks ago, I'd still be on the trainer now. I might not have been that motivated that week, but because you just take it day by day and you just do your job, get on with it. And I think also, personally speaking, I'm sure you can explain this as well. When I came to Israel Startup Nation, me and Paulo together, we identified a lot of gaps in my training, and we almost needed this extended training block to fill in those gaps before the first races. So it's actually, on a personal point of view, it hasn't been, obviously we would have preferred to be outside filling in these gaps, but it's actually been quite a productive few weeks.
Yeah, I agree for sure. I mean, it's people would probably be surprised at how optimized your training is with regards to total hourly load that you do on a weekly basis, whether it's outside or inside. You're one of these guys that really responds well and quickly to quality-based work, maybe because you've been in the sport for a lot of years. Your body just is stimulated very quickly and it adapts very well. So you don't need like these mega, 30-hour weeks stacked onto each other. It actually surprised me a little bit at the beginning, because I thought, well, here's a guy who's super responsive to quality, and if you load him up with all these garbage miles all day long, it's actually going to make him slower. So it was an interesting experience to go through that with you.
I think my whole career, I've never really done huge hours. I've always arrived at training camp in January or December with half the number of hours everybody else and been just as fit. Whether that is because I've tended to ride harder during that time on the bike, or just my physical nature, but yeah, obviously it seems to work. And you distracted me then. I was supposed to ride at 80 RPM.
Yeah, exactly. You got to get down into that cadence range. There you go. You're in there now. You're in the power window too, so we're good. I'm in the right power band.
So I might not be able to talk soon.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I brought your numbers down a little bit today to 350, so you shouldn't have too hard of a time here. Although, we'll see. But I was going to ask you while you're doing the last piece of your warm up here. We got about maybe 3-4 minutes. I was going to ask you, has it been tough for you to juggle all the pieces that now you have to juggle because you are inside? Like normally you get outside and there's a sense of freedom that's associated with that. But when you're stuck indoors, like the mundane things like administration or taking out the garbage or whatever, even family obligations, can weigh on you a little bit. Has that played any additional stress on you, or are you used to doing that anyway, so it made no difference?
I think obviously having the kids, like we've got what are they now? They're 19 months old, twins.
Right, and adorable at that.
Yeah, it keeps us busy, but it does obviously have I think being down here, you don't get that mental refreshment of riding outside, and
right.
That fresh air, that it does make a big difference. And I think that's where a lot of people, that's where being an athlete has helped during this whole period, because I think we wake up in the morning and we have we've got a structure behind our day. And with the kids, We've got even more structure, Obviously, you've got them to look after. We also have, time. You have to get on the bike 2-3 hours a day. So it gives you that reason to live, and it's, I think a lot of people will be struggling psychologically at this time, purely because they wake up in the morning and, if you're in isolation, you're restricted to staying at home. What do? You know, you can't work, you can't. Whereas we have so much structure behind our day that it's made the time go pretty quickly.
Right. Okay.
I've got 14 seconds left and I can talk properly.
There you go. Dan's at about 110 RPM right now, pushing about 330 watts. Remember, he's at altitude, so we always make adjustments in the software for him being at altitude.
Right.
And
Easy.
He's now recovering after about a 15-minute warm-up or 10 or 15-minute warm-up. Today, he's just kind of going through a workout where he does, it's kind of called an assortment. So he does an assortment of different pieces. Some of them are cadence-based, some of them are power-based, some of them are pedal stroke feel-based. And we do a lot of that with this type of software to try and see how well Dan is able to feel the pedal stroke. And actually, he's done surprisingly well at this. These drills. One of them is called like a target segment, where we'll get him to try and hit an exact target power and an exact target cadence on demand. And most riders who aren't used to that have a difficult time with it. But because he's been racing for so many years and he's fairly efficient, he's been able to actually hit those targets in the 99 to 99.9% range, which is too bad because I was hoping to bug him about it and indicate another gap there. But, you know,
I'm still shooting for your PB. But it's the competitiveness coming out that I just want to beat your PB. So, which is what, 99.9 or something?
99.99.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's gonna be tricky, but that involves a lot of luck as well. Let's be honest.
Yeah, a little bit, because at the end, you know, you can, if you do enough of them, you'll eventually get a good one in there.
I think I've done 99.8, but
yeah, I've seen you do 99.8, 99.89 you've done, so you're almost perfect, Dan. You're not quite there yet. Tell me a little bit about, you've been at this sport a long time, and I know that it was probably an interesting transition when we sort of started you started to consider to move to our team. We were Pro Conti at the time, subsequently moved up to World Tour. What's your transition been like from other teams to this team? Let our viewers listen a little bit about, or hear a little bit about your thoughts on what the transition was like for you.
Yeah, obviously it's, when you change teams, it's always, you always get a culture shock, whatever, because it's a completely new environment, new people, but it's only been positive coming to Israel Cyclist Nation. You know, feels like I've like just dropped into place. I found an environment that I feel incredibly comfortable in, and it actually feels very similar to like the Slipstream Sports organization that I turned pro in, and that's one that was incredibly, back then it was completely English speaking, very forward thinking, and just looking to give the riders the best environment possible to be able to perform in. And that's what it feels like at Israel Startup Nation. And like from the outside, that doesn't come across. And obviously, when we first started discussing me coming into the team, it really took me by surprise. And that's why I think there's a lot of surprise that I had when it was announced that I was coming into the team, that this was like why I wasn't going to a bigger team. But obviously then we turned World Tour and people saw the ambition and the reasoning behind me wanting to be part of this project, because that's what really inspires me and really motivates me this year, is helping this team grow into one of the best teams in the world, and also just helping the young riders progress and playing a part in what is an incredibly ambitious setup, but also obviously on a personal note, getting the best out of myself, because I really believe that this is the best environment for me to perform, to finally get the best out of my talent, use my talents the most, and just to really, I'm sitting here in my garage or in my basement, not being able to race, and it's obviously been a tricky year, and that's also frustrating, but it's also motivating, because I knew the condition I was in. We were going into this most important time of the year for myself, and with the classics and those stage races in March, April, and that was, we were on target to get some really incredible results. Obviously, hopefully, we can do that by the end of the year, and really make a mark on this season. Because I think after the support the sponsors have shown us, that also shows where this team's headed. Because I think this team really understands what the rider needs, and the psychological. It isn't just the physical side of this sport; it's incredibly psychological, and having that little competitiveness, that little bit of banter in, like our pro challenge, the 30 seconds, the 2 minutes. I think that giving us that little bit of competitive edge to race against each other, even though we're all obviously away and stuck at home, it shows an understanding of the psyche behind a professional bike rider, and I think that's incredibly important.
Yeah, I mean, for those of you watching or listening who don't know, we had some internal competitions, our riders, where we tried to produce some training sessions that are rooted in some of these Power Watts concepts, where the rider not only has to put out some physical efforts, but he has to do so and think about everything from pacing, how much recovery to take, and things of that nature. So a lot of times what you see is these rigid interval structures with riders that are very sort of predetermined. And one of the things we did was opened up a window, let's say, of 15 minutes for Power Watts 30-second challenge with our team. And we told the guys to do 10 of these efforts of 30 seconds as hard as you can, with 4 times the bonus points for your highest one. And the person with the highest average and the highest individual one to win. Dan was the podium for the watch per speed category, even though he's at altitude.
And inside. And on the trainer.
And inside, exactly, and stuck inside. Whereas I think Tom Van Osbroek won the sort of absolute watch category. It was an interesting, fun game. And now we have another one called the 2-minute Hell Challenge. Multiple categories. Now, I got to say, Dan, you made it to a pretty good level. So
we'll see.
Courage and respect, I think, are 2 things that come to mind from your levels that you got to. But speaking of training,
2 minutes is probably the worst type of effort at this altitude as well. So yes, I'm not too optimistic.
And one of the interesting pieces that have come out of our work together is I have to be very dialed into how deep you can actually push yourself in training.
We cooked me a few times this year already, huh? Yes. There's been a few, for people listening, there's been a few times this year when I've been like, I kind of go into this, I call it stage race mode, where I can just beat the crap out of myself every day, and keep going. And then eventually it breaks. And it's like, oh, gee, Paolo, I'm tired. And that happened, that hangs around for about what, 5 days? It's like
4 or 5 days. Yeah.
I was like, what do you mean you're still tired? I'm like, yeah, I guess I went pretty deep last week.
Yeah. So Dan has this ability to drive himself very, very deeply, and it's one of the reasons I think that he's evolved as a rider to the level that he's evolved to. And the problem with that, though, is when somebody can really dig that deep, you got to really have a good sense of your, as a coach anyway, how much of your foot to put on the accelerator and put on the brake. And Dan is very motivated, obviously. So sometimes he says, yeah, we can give it another go. So that combination of me being driven by quality-based training and Dan driven by the ability to lead sometimes has led to a block of unplanned recovery, let's just say. and that's okay, though, because it comes out of them a little bit stronger, a little bit more robust, and a little bit more ready to tackle the races. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to demonstrate that in the last couple of months, but we're pretty good to Portugal. I think people noticed you, and you made an impact, and you were there. I think short of a couple of little technical glitches, you you could have had an opportunity to win there, and you were very close.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's been a while since I won a race now, and although the last race that I won was a stage of the Tour, obviously. So it's not.
Yeah.
I'm not resting on those laurels though, for sure. And we came really close to winning in Portugal and Valencia, and that was just a work in progress. You know, we didn't really know what to expect there, but the team did a great job for me, and it just really breeded that confidence, and that made me push myself even more in training. And I think I just really enjoy the quality-based training now, and that's why you can push yourself so deep, so hard, because it's out of sheer enjoyment and pleasure for the effort and embracing that effort. And that's it's also knowing, like, I really do garner a lot of motivation out of knowing why we're doing the efforts, and that's something that I think we've got a really good relationship as far as having that understanding that why I'm doing this effort today and how that's going to improve me. And that's something that a lot of guys, I think it's this whole race to get fit thing. Like, I think a lot of guys need those races to get that fitness up, because they push themselves harder in racing than they can do at home.
Right.
And but I think a lot of the training sessions I do at home now, thanks to you, which I say begrudgingly, they're probably harder than most of the races. So, and that's what also works about being in your basement, because I can literally crawl on my hands and knees to the shower. The shower's just there. So I don't need to ride home.
Well, you mentioned your last victory and stage in the Tour. What is your most memorable cycling event that you've encountered in your whole career?
Result or race?
Or just more memorable, the one that really left the biggest impact on you.
I think a lot of the biggest impacts are the ones that were horrible days, you know, weather-wise. Like, it's kind of, you have those days that feels like it took years off your life. It's probably a dramatic statement to make, but some of these days, like, I think I've kind of straddled this generation now, whereby the first 4 or 5 years of my career, we raced whatever, you know. It was snowing. I remember the one day in Catalonia, we started at like 400 meters altitude. It was pouring rain and 4 degrees. And that day we were due to go over 2,000 meters 3 times. And it's like, come on, guys, what do you think is going to happen? Like, you know, and it's like, and sure enough, well, actually, after 6 kilometers, I was involved in a big crash and really hurt myself. And then got back in the peloton after the break had gone, and sure enough, about halfway up the first climb, we were basically in 2 lines in the peloton, because there was 2 wheel tracks through the snow. And I remember about 3 or 4 kilometers before the top, I stopped and I changed every item of clothing I could, like rain jacket, undershirt, everything. And I was probably about 3-4 minutes behind the peloton at that point. I caught the peloton after about 2 kilometers of the downhill, because guys were shaking themselves off the bike into the ditch. I saw guys just like riding off the road with hypothermia. Like, that day, I think we hit the feet. This is long, gradual downhill, like 4 or 5% on a big wide road. So obviously the worst. Anybody that's ever ridden in those conditions, the absolute worst, because you're in a peloton. You basically just don't pedal. You coast, you're freezing, you're shivering.
Right.
And that change of clothes definitely saved me that day, because I think about 60 or 70 riders pulled out in the feed zone. Sure enough, 10 kilometers later, they stopped the race. And those guys were not let back in the race. So It was kind of this crazy day that just, like, I think every pro that was there, obviously there's always races that you haven't been to that have probably had worse days and whatnot, but that was one of those days that anybody that was there, I think it was Volta Catalunya 2012, and it was just brutal. Without the crash, it would have been brutal, but with the crash, it was not a nice day.
Sounds like a horrible story.
But then you have that year in Liège when it was snowing. And I remember looking at the Garmin after 7.5 hours or whatever it was, 7 hours at the finish line, and we had an average temperature of 0. It was just like, absolutely just I think what year was that? Liège 2016, I think it was. It was just just horrible day. But then obviously there's good days as well. There's these amazing days when you don't feel the pedals and you're racing in the mountains of the Tour de France it's scorching hot and you just feel incredible and you can do whatever you want. And those days that I think as a trainer, as a coach, you can kind of confirm that sometimes those days you can't even plan. They just happen and we don't know why. It's just, you just get a good day every now and again.
Yeah, you get into that flow mode, and you literally don't feel the chain. I get that, and it's very hard to plan that. By the way, you're absolutely right. Sometimes they just show up at your doorstep, but you're grateful every time they do. So those are some interesting experiences, dramatic experiences. What race result are you the most proud of?
I think winning Liège was probably, it's tied between winning Liège because that was just one of those days, like I say, that I was just so relaxed, so happy, so comfortable in the group. Like I just couldn't do anything wrong. And just one of those days that everything just clicked into place. And then also I think that finishing in sixth for the Tour, although that's obviously bittersweet because that was the year that I broke my back and I rode, 12 stages with 2 fractured vertebrae. And that's also, it's bittersweet because if I hadn't had that crash and the time lost that day because of the crash, I would have been very close to the podium. And then obviously with the injury as well, I don't think I would have won the race, but I think that was definitely a really damn good shot at the podium that year. I would have been very, very close. And, but yeah, that happens, it's also, I could have been out the race. So you have to take it bittersweet all the time. And the fact was I was never in too bad a pain to have to stop the race. So yeah, it's in that blink of an eye, but it's funny how those moments, you remember them so clearly. I remember them literally the first 3-4 kilometers of the downhill. I remember Richie passing me about 600 meters before he crashed. And I remember thinking, oh, maybe I shouldn't let him pass me. Or maybe I should just go to the back of the group. And then it happened, and it's, it's one of those crazy days that I think, unfortunately, between that day and the day I crashed in the last corner of Liège, when I was looking like I was going to win, I might be remembered after my career for my crashes rather than the good results.
Well, it does bring up an interesting point. I've always sort of pondered this in bike racing results. Is there's a foundational level of talent top guys have that you have to have in order to be there. But my question is for you is once that is there, how much of the race result is determined by luck, in your opinion?
Obviously, I think there's a lot of judgment, which comes with experience as well. But I wouldn't say it's luck. It's just you need to make the right calls on the day, and whether that's decided by luck, or that judgment, or skill, or intelligence on the bike. But yeah, I think basically the stars have to align, and I think especially with the way the races are so competitive now, that you could say, is it bad luck if you are eating a bar and somebody crashes in front of you? That's bad luck, or if you're eating a gel just at that moment when the winning attack goes. Should you be eating a gel in that important point in the race? Or is that bad luck as far as you chose the wrong moment? It's
right.
I think a bike race is made up of dozens, if not hundreds, of micro choices, micro decisions during the race. And it's that decision-making process that I don't think we can really explain. That it's a part of talent that whether you can learn that or not, I don't know. But I think it comes down to feeling for the race and knowing, like there's been a few moments in my career that you have to roll the dice, and you'll be coming back from a nature break, and the peloton would have split. Do you then make a big effort to try and get back across, or do you just gamble and hope that the other guys in the group will do the work for you? You know, it's those little. Right. I think at some points you really have to take all these little risks during the race, especially the longer races, the classics and that, because you cannot be in the first 10 riders all day. So you have to really choose your moments. And I remember Liège is that's why I like these classics, like Liège, like Flanders. It's all about knowing the course. I remember I was lucky enough to be with Philippe Gilbert when he won Amstel Gold. And Amstel's a race that I've never managed to feel really good in. I've never kind of got the hang of. And I kind of do it one year, miss it the next year because I had a bad experience. Then the following year, I think, hell yeah, it's a good race for me. I'll go back again. You know, and I think that racing it with Philippe the one year, I kind of just followed him all day. And I saw how he rode the race. And he knew exactly when to move up. And it was easy. And then sure enough, like 30 seconds, a minute later, when he's just gone to the front easily, everybody has decided, oh, now's the moment to go to the front. And it's impossible to get there. You know, and it's very similar to Liège as well. Like they keep changing the course now, so it's a little bit more complicated. But for a few years there, it was more or less the same. And you kind of had in your mind, okay, you need to be in the front there, there, and there. The rest of the race, you can relax. And then you used to watch other teams, or other riders, less experienced riders, fighting for the front in the wrong moment. Like, oh, there's a climb coming up, I have to be in the front. And they're killing themselves to be in the front. And you see all the experienced riders are sitting back and relaxing and waiting and saving the energy. And then, you know, and it's all about just learning the race and feeling the race and understanding that sometimes, okay, there's a slight chance that a crash might happen at that point and you lose the race. Mm-hmm. But that energy that you save from not fighting to be in the front at that point is actually valuable at the finish.
Yeah, we call it on our team race IQ. And it's comprised of a lot of different things, and many of them are intangible. You know, experience brings race IQ, but I've always wondered if there's a natural element to that. You know, there's a natural capacity for having good race IQ, whether it's, you know, the sense of rhythm, the focus of an athlete, but all of these things I think are. Oh, you're going on a downhill now, Dan. So
yeah, I know.
I'm going to just.
I've lost all the power. I was never going to it's 90% and talking.
Yeah, exactly.
That was never going to happen.
Scary. But so what I was going to ask you, talking a little bit about flow and rhythm in a peloton, which is really tough to describe. You almost have to live it to really understand it. I'm wondering, as an athlete, you mentioned before that, you know, sometimes you have to roll the dice. Do you find that you as an athlete you've changed the way you roll the dice over the years? Like, do you still roll the dice as much as you used to? Has that changed over the years? Let's say, for example, when you were younger, did you roll the dice a lot and now you're just very selective about when you do that? Or has it been the same across the years?
I think that's perhaps one of my downfalls lately, that I try to roll the dice as much as I used to, but because I'm a little bit more well known, obviously in my formative years, I could get away with being caught in a split behind. Whereas now, if somebody sees I'm in a group behind, the stronger teams are going to put the gas on, and I'm never coming back. You know, so it's it's also, I think cycling has changed a lot because you have these some of the teams are super organized now and very professional and there's a lot more. A lot of teams now, they like the Ineos and Jumbo, and they have these super teams that have kind of appeared, and the tactics of racing have changed, and you'll see there's a lot less risk taking, because I think also that's down to the stakes being so much higher. You know, it's every World Tour point counts now, and there's so much pressure for points, whereas 5-6 years ago, it was just all about the race victory. And you were kind of encouraged to go all in for the win and risk losing everything. Whereas now, if you'll see the lack of attacking during the Tour de France, because if you attack and lose a heap of time, you get fried in the media, and your team's like, "What the hell were you doing? You could have finished 8th in the Tour de France." It's like, well, yeah, but I attacked to try and get on the podium, you know. And okay, now I'm going to finish 10th, but what's the difference between 8th and 10th, really? But for a sponsor, it's valuable, you know. So I think there's a lot more commercial pressure, and also, especially around those bigger races. I think in the smaller races, that's why you see a lot more open racing and a lot more aggression, because they're kind of, you can, there's a lot less to lose, and the sponsor doesn't care, or the teams aren't worried if you get 7th in a stage of Tour of Germany, for example, or something like that. But if you win a stage, it's a big deal, you know. So it's I think it depends on what race you're in, and obviously on a personal note as well. It's kind of, if you are in the hunt for the GC and you're in 5th or 6th in the last week, why would you risk everything? Because in the back of your mind, you're hoping that somebody else is going to risk it, and then they'll blow up and you'll take their place. You know, so it is also like a game of poker. But I do think, you see a lot of negativity as well. That's my experience, and that's one of the reasons why I kind of struggle with the Tour de France a little bit now, because I've had a lot of occasions when I'll be, say, 7th or 8th on the GC, and you'll throw down an attack, and then 9th and 10th and 6th will chase you. Whereas really, it's not really their job to chase you, you know? It's why are they, you know, it's kind of, you're constantly racing the guys around you rather than trying to win the bike race. And it's kind of, obviously I won the most aggressive rider in the Tour de France in 2018. And that was down to a little bit, the reason I was so aggressive that year was because I got 6th the year before. And there I am sitting in 8th, 9th, whatever I was. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, you know what? If I get 8th this year, what really does it mean? Because I've already finished 9th in 2016, finished 6th in 2016. I want to go all in and try and go top 5 or win a stage. I'm trying to win stages, you know? And I was willing to risk my GC to try and win stages. But the way others race, that conservatism, that cynicism, it was frustrating, you know. And it's
it's hard to win if you're afraid to lose, and when you take the big risk, you can get the big reward, but you can also move down 12 positions. You know, like you said, 8th, 9th, 7th, 10th in the GC is probably not anything that has value to you. More winning a stage or being in the podium is a bigger. We're hearing Dan start to breathe now.
Sorry?
We're hearing Dan starting to breathe now because the gauges have disappeared, and he's supposed to actually feel his way through this next interval. And I've got him distracted.
You distracted me as well, yeah. Okay, so it's it's the blind one.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
So you talked about the sport changing, and you mentioned that it's more controlled, it's more structured. But I've heard some different kinds of stories from talking to other riders who've been at it for a long time in the game, and they basically told me that the sport has changed in different ways. That a lot of younger riders coming up through the ranks take a lot more risks and can make the peloton more of a risky place. Do you see that, or is that just the experience of a couple of people?
I don't know if it's rider skill or guys are just willing. I like talking to the younger riders. I think it's also a factor of society as well. I think there is a lot less longevity in a cyclist career now. And if you don't get a result in your first 2 years, you're out. You know, whereas, especially with these super talents that are kind of, I think there's a lot of atmosphere, like a lot of this attitude in cycling now that because there are these super talents, so-called, who appear, all the teams are looking for these young guys who smash it out of the park immediately. And some guys take a while to develop. And it seems that, there's a lot of good bike riders who don't really get the chance anymore because they're not given that time to develop, that opportunity.
Good point. Yeah,
to learn. And I think it's underestimated, It's kind of, okay, the best, in 5 years' time, there's going to be a list of the top riders in the world, and they're probably 21, 22 years old now and winning races already. But those guys are also going to need backup. And those 21, 22-year-olds probably aren't winning races and getting big results. But they still have this pressure, and they're put under pressure. And it's also, I think, there seems to be a lot more in your ear in the race radio, pressure to not be at the back. For whatever reason, it's like, and it's something that I kind of ignore now because, like, for example, the Tour de France, it's kind of, there's this pressure to be in the top 30, 40, all stage, even in the neutral zone. Right. And that's such a wasted energy, So I agree that obviously in the last 20 kilometers to avoid crashes, etc., you need to kind of get your elbows out and kind of fight and be in the front. Yeah. But if you've got 200 kilometers to go in a flat stage with zero wind, there's no reason to be fighting for first positions. But that's the attitude now. You want to. It's almost like if you're seen at the back, you're being lazy. And it's like, actually, you can save quite a lot of energy being back there. It's kind of, especially the mental energy that builds up over 3 weeks of racing. And I think that comes back to what I said at the start of this conversation. There's a lot of people underestimate the mental toll of cycling. I mean, I've said it to a lot of people during the season. When you get to October, November, obviously we have off season, we have 3, 4, whatever weeks off the bike. It's not the body that needs it, it's your head. You get to a point in the season when you just don't want to hurt yourself anymore. And that's where this season also brings it us nicely to this season as well, because who knows, like all these guys smashing themselves in training since last November, are they going to be able to race in November? Like mentally speaking, I think physically, no problem. But mentally, it's a long time without a psychological break, especially when you think being stuck inside, there's been a high toll on the mental aspect of it.
No doubt. I mean, this is a once in a lifetime experience that we don't really know what the outcomes are going to be. There's a lot of unknowns there for sure. But I agree with you that people tend to think that they have an infinite amount of mental energy, and they really don't. It's just like physical energy; it runs out, and you need to recharge it, and you need to recover mentally as much as you do physically, and particularly indoors. So we got now here, Dan. I noticed that you're doing. Is it another? Yeah, it's another pedal stroke feel effort.
Yeah, I didn't really. I'm not going to hit 96% while you're talking.
No chance. But I did lower your numbers a little bit more just so that I wouldn't get you too much out of breath. We have another interval coming up that's not super hard because I brought the numbers down, but you can just roll through it as we talk a little bit more. One of the things that
maybe you should, that 30 seconds you can aim to talk, and then I'll try and hold it as best as I can, and we'll see how good I
am. There you go. Well, now you're in a little recovery phase, but you can see by the line that just came up on CPX that you're probably hitting around 80% there. That's fine. It's all good. Today is supposed to be a non kind of structured day anyway, so I figured if I get you talking, it'll distract you enough to not worry about the structure. It's important not to be over-structured, that's for sure, especially these days. It's with the numbers always in front of you, it's not like you're out there enjoying the wind on your face, Do you have a fan, by the way, in front of you, or do you use a fan to train indoors?
I turned it off so that you can hear me better. I didn't want the noise of the fan coming across the microphone. So, yeah, I'm sweating.
So one of the things I was going to say was when I first got wind of the fact that Gel was in discussions with you and there was an opportunity to maybe get you on board with Israel Startup Nation team. We had a couple of conversations, and what struck me about you is that first of all, you don't have any bullshit to you. You say what you think, and you provide clear, open, and honest feedback all the time. You're not a complainer. What you are is a guy who sees the gaps and actually verbalizes them. And for me, it was a perfect scenario because this team needed that. This team was at a pro Conti level and needed to understand where its gap. And I'm all about gap management and improvements. And I found that, forget your capacity as a bike racer. Put that aside. With your experience and your understanding of the sport and how teams are run, for me, that was of equal value to bring you on board for our squad because you say what you think. And I didn't have to worry about, oh, come on, let me drag some information out of you, Dan, because I know it was going to flow to me anyway. So that's one of the pieces that I really appreciate about having you on the squad. But I can see where maybe on other teams, maybe more conservative teams, that could probably be something step back from it and say, hold on a second, Dan, we're doing everything perfectly. Have you encountered that in the past?
Yeah, for sure. I think I'm a little bit of a perfectionist. And I think also I hold myself to very, very high standards. And it is perhaps a mistake I made in the past that I expect everybody around me to hold themselves to that high standard too. Or perhaps it's hold themselves to my high standards as well. Right. But at the same time, and I do, obviously, sometimes it maybe comes across a bit harsh, especially when there's adrenaline involved, and it does come across wrong. But as you say, I think it's important. The stakes are so high in cycling now, and it's when you see simple errors or mistakes that can be made, or improvements that can be made, rather.
Yeah.
That is for the good of everybody. Yeah, I think it's wrong not to be listened to, and it's also I care as well. I mean, I really want everybody on this team to be successful, and obviously perhaps I do waste even a little bit too much energy worrying about what other riders in the team, their results, and how I can improve their performances as well. Mm-hmm. When sometimes it's obviously I should maybe just concentrate on my own performance, but it's part of who I am, and you could call it an overactive brain, that I overanalyze everything. And obviously in training that can also be a negative point, because sometimes you do just need to forget how the legs feel, forget how the body feels, and just go. And other days you do need to listen to every little feeling that your body has, but I think I do try to analyze every little thing, and as I say, it puts pressure on myself personally as well, because I like to think if everybody else is putting 100% effort in, then I've got no excuse not to win, and I like that.
Yeah, it's actually an interesting mindset, and it certainly the team is going to benefit, or has benefited already, from that mindset, because from a mentorship perspective and from a gap management perspective, I think it's really helped to have you on our squad, and I'm super excited about getting this season underway so we can let the animals out of the cage, so to speak.
Well, you just have to keep testing those team challenges on me as well. I'm the guinea pig.
Yeah, exactly.
That's also everybody has to measure themselves against me, which is a bit of pressure. I feel so much pressure when I'm going into those challenges. I'm like, geez, I got to set the bar high.
Yeah, and I was telling, I think I'm actually speaking to James Pickley today, because he's going to do a little bit of commentating on the 2-minute challenge for Wednesday with the Power Waters. And when I speak to him, I'm going to tell him that he's going to have to load up on 16 espressos and do his efforts at sea level to kick your butt on the 2-minute challenge. He's all fired up about it. I think he told me that he actually doesn't feel all that bad after having done
Yeah.
330 kilometers of Everest challenge, which is insane.
That was epic. But honestly, I could probably do it outside here. I've got 2-hour window to train, so I can probably do it outside. We'll see if it's any different.
Yeah.
For sure it's different because I don't need to. I have to stay seated on the
Absolutely.
trainer, which is hard.
Yeah, for sure. It's a disadvantage. There's no doubt about it. And then obviously you add the altitude to that, and it hurts. But it's still it's a fun event and keeps you guys a little bit engaged. And that's a beeper that just went off for the next section, which is I don't know if you see there, but the gauge just switched into absolute. And absolute mode allows you to do sprints, and this is a little mini acceleration set. It's not a sprint set.
Okay.
It's an acceleration set. And in 30 seconds, it means you're going to do a little effort here. And I'm just going to pull up the settings gauge here and just see if I can.
I've never seen this one before, so I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah. So what it is you're going to actually give me an acceleration and try and hit where the target says hit this range. And you'll see in a few seconds that it's going to ask you in 5 seconds to hit the number. You'll have to accelerate to it. And 3, 2, 1, it'll pop up now. It should pop up now. There you go. It's actually recovering now. So now you're recovering.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm going to put a little sprint gauge up there when you get a chance here. I'm going to probably show it to you. Let me see user chart options. And give me a second here. Okay. I'm going to wait till the next interval to do that because I want to ask you a couple more quick questions. I know we're almost at the end of our interview here. So
is that 20 seconds the next interval? So I got to do this one?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So when you see on the line on the bottom, it's green there on the bottom map. That's when you have to accelerate to it. So in 5 seconds, you got to stand and accelerate and just try and hit the target there. There you go. Hit it. And boom, and come off it. There you go. That's it. It's just some accelerations to finish it off, and just to kind of open the legs a little bit towards the end of a session. And so, look, I mean, you and myself and Rory, I have a group that we have formed, and I call it the Godfather group. And I was going to call it the grumpy old man group because Rory was in it, but I didn't want to be too insulting to Rory. But you guys are like my eyes and ears on the team for giving me.
You shouldn't be telling people that because everybody's going to be really nice to me now.
What I like about Grant, the Godfather group, is that you guys are kind of, in a sense, my eyes and ears by pointing out gaps that you see on the team, mostly just how we can do things better, and Rory's been great for that too, because obviously he's been at this sport for longer than you have. I think he has. He actually started in 2000 or something? I can't even remember.
I don't know when he exactly turned pro. 2005, maybe he turned pro, I think.
Yeah, well,
so yeah.
When I interview him, I'm going to ask him what it felt like to use the down tube shifters, and carry those tubulars around his neck. So anyway, listen, Dan, I'm not going to take up any more of your time. I'm super appreciative that you could spend some time with us today while you were riding. This has been an enjoyable ride so far, and let's hope that you guys are let out of your cages very soon to get outside and racing season starts. You guys are all in race mode. I
hope so too, man. I think you hope more than me. You set some more interesting training.
Cool, man. Anyway, man, you be well. Thanks a lot, Dan. Take care.
Thanks, Paulo. See you soon. Bye.
Bye.